До свидания? Well, how do you say that? I don't know. Cool stuff. Yes, I'm from Denmark, and my name is Ken, and our company is called BEL.BIZ Labs, Inc. We just incorporated in the US with a subsidiary. Super great. We have American investors at this point. And we actually started up as a student startup in Denmark, sort of this, how can students do projects in the university, take it outside of the university and actually turn it into a business and start employing first your friends and start firing your friends and hiring smarter people, because that's not awkward. And now we are in a position where we are talking about some major giants that we are actually poking a bit at. One of them is the obvious big red from Denmark that I'll talk a little more about in a few minutes. But basically what it is, the issue is sort of like this. And it's kind of tragicomic that I took such an old picture. I could actually have taken a picture of you guys, because this whole setting, this whole way of teaching and learning and listening is absolutely fundamentally flawed. As human beings, we are not made to sit here 8 hours, sorry to the organizers, but this is horrible. We're not made to sit here 8 hours to listen constantly, right? That's not how we're made. This whole structure is something that we're taught, and we're taught it right from the start. And we continue doing it, and we're just okay with it, because what's the alternative? Well, 250 years ago, when the British was still a global empire, and they had outposts in India, they had a real interest in creating drones that could learn in sort of like this session, right? You'd like to teach something to somebody in the UK, ship them over to India, and know that when he's communicating with people back home, you're talking the same language, you're using the same maths, you have an interest in creating drones. But today, we're not interested in creating drones. We see children, like the boy sitting over here, literally falling asleep, obviously maybe not knowing what's being talked about. But that's what happened all across schools everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the US, if you're here in Belarus, or if you're in Denmark, in Germany, or wherever. The way that we teach our children is effectively, on a daily basis, killing creative geniuses. I want you to think a little about that. The number one thing that our kids need in 5-10 years, when they have to carry the weight of all the other generations on their shoulders, is to be creative thinkers, is to think shit up, is to solve some of the problems that we're creating for the world. And it's definitely based on creativity. The child sitting over here was playing a game. His brain was being continuously stimulated, dopamine and all of this good stuff flying around in his brain, playing whatever, what's it called, Candy Crush, or a tank game. I heard a guy from Belarus made a cool tank game, right? And made a few bucks on that. It stimulates the brain. We consume it. We love it. It's like a fix. We got to check out Facebook. Everything is kind of gamified and built into it. But the educational system hasn't fundamentally moved since 250 years. We just kind of we chocolate cover the broccoli. Doesn't go down pretty well. And the issue is that there's no way to really capture information, put it into a standardized test, and put it into a framework of the education. And I get it, As a child, you're 3 years old, and you're going to a test. You're not going to get an A on hula hoops or hide and seek, right? You can't grade things like this. You can't grade how well you are playing with your pals, or shooting football, or climbing trees, or fighting off dragons, right? All of these things. The child brain just fires in so many cool ways. I know some of you guys had kids, right? Yeah, do you love your kids? That's a pretty stupid question. Of course we do, right? Is it all right to hurt our children? No, right? It would be pretty awkward if we said, yeah, sure, we can hit our kids. We can, put physical pain onto our children. Of course we can't do that. But we're doing it every single day when we send our kids into the school, and we don't realize it. But neurobiology is now starting to tell us that when you put children in a situation where you test them, where you score them, where they have to answer something, they might know the answer to the thing that you're asking them about, like a snail, what kind of color, or what gender, or whatever you want to ask a child. It's the whole situation of asking them and demanding an answer from them that is putting them in a situation that is actually firing the same parts of the brain that are connected with physical pain. So you might not be slapping your kid, but you're putting them in a situation where their brain is telling them, this is not funny, I'm having a really hard time with this, I might fail, I can't do this, and you end up with children that are not doing all right. And some of us have gotten out of school, hated it, and we've turned out quite all right. But the way that everything is changing, becoming digitized like this, the whole thing of the brain development is not moving at the same kind of pace it did when we were children. I was playing Super Nintendo when I was a kid. My parents were going, you should go out and play some more football or something. Your eyes are going to be square from playing all the Super Nintendo. And today people, when I talk to them, they go like, well, it's just the same story with the whole digitization and children playing iPads. It's just the same thing, right? They're getting square eyes and ha ha ha, and they're going to turn out all right. Well, we're putting iPads in the hands of 18-month-old children. That's the time of life when a child needs to put stuff in their mouth, explore the world, crawl, fall, hit their heads. Actually, nature is pretty smart. The child, when he's this high, the brain or the scalp can still move, it's still flexible. And that is actually precisely flexible enough. So if that child falls without, taking off, his head can take it. But if that child doesn't fall, if that child doesn't learn at some point that I should probably put up my hands when I fall, otherwise my head is going to hurt, if he doesn't learn those things, he's in a pretty bad spot. And the fine motor skills that kids need to learn, like moving balls, why on the effing world aren't they just using balls? Why are they doing that on a screen? Because this is not fine motor skills. This is not stimulating the brain of your child, right? And there's something happening in the brain called neural pruning. And I don't want to bore you with a lot of neuroscience, but it basically means that the parts of the brain that are not being used die off. They're not getting stimulated, so the brain says, oh, well, this might not be that important, so I'm just going to shut it off. Well, fine motor skills is one of the precursors for learning languages, logical thinking, math. And if you start to take away that stimulation from that young an age, you're going to end up in 18 years with a child that is not going to do pretty good on his SATs. So, lo and behold, the answer right here in this child's hands. Obviously, this is not a gold and silver bullet, but what we are trying to do is the world's smartest building blocks. So it's a way for a child to use these 27 smart and connected magnetic building blocks to interact with the digital world. So playing on the iPad, but actually using their hands and using their fingers out in the real world, building, constructing stuff, taking them, because these are all intelligent, they talk to each other. So you could have one, Natasha? You can have one, and this kind of tag to you, and I could have one. So during recess, we could run around, play a game where we need to connect to as many people as we have to. So you have physical activity, you have social interaction, and you can capture every single interaction because every single building block is a motion detection device connected to an iPad, connected to a base station, connected to the cloud, and you can start doing analysis, you can start doing assessment, you can start looking at children's development, you can start correlating it across the whole population of all the children using it without a single test. So playDXTR to your child, it's a great toy. It motivates, it stimulates them, it helps them to solve problems, and it also allows them to fail, because failing is not a bad thing. A baby learning to walk will fail a gazillion times before it learns to walk. It doesn't matter. Failure is not a problem. We make it a problem. When I tell you, you better walk tomorrow, if you don't walk tomorrow, I'm telling you, you're going to get one. Then we make it into a problem. Failure is not a problem. And as I said, once we start to digitize things, we can start to look at the data, we can start to analyze it, and we can start to look for trends. We can start to put not a standardized box, but we can paint a very clear picture about you. Did you get that? perfect timing. About you, every child is individual. Every child is special. Every child, doesn't matter if you have autism, or if you are cerebral palsy, or if you're, multi-handicapped. You're still a child. You're still a human being with a brain, and you have something that you can do. You have a brain that needs stimulation. And then when we can start to tap into that by measuring all the interactions, we can start to map it out. And we can start to say, okay, so kids that have this and this profile, that tend to do this and this, learn in this and this sequence, and they are so and so successful on creative thinking, for instance. Let's try and take that sequence of events and apply that to a child with autism and see what happens. You can start making experiments digitally, instantly, and you can measure the results right away. Sorry, you broke your phone. So for the first time ever, we're trying to create a toy that is not just a toy, but it's actually also a tool. That 5 minutes? Shit. Okay. That'll give you insights into your child's development. So we can do that through developing our own hardware. We had to do it because there's nothing out there that can do it. So we're developing the sensors together with Bosch, the Bluetooth communications together with Cypress from the US, and the base station is going to be Raspberry Pi, basically, but our own design, connected to the cloud. So at this point you're going, okay, these guys are from Denmark, they're doing building blocks, so you must be some kind of Lego 2.0, right? And it's like, yeah, not really, because we're not a toy company. We call ourselves a life science company because we're going to start to capture all of this information, not just from children. We started out somewhere completely different, actually, with Parkinson's disease. So we were working at the university with local Parkinson's patients, trying to figure out what is really the problem for these guys. And through very close interactions with them, we found out most of them have problems with self-confidence. Like going out, buying your milk, because you're going to fumble, you're going to lose your money, or you're going to make an ass of yourself. So we thought, okay, could we create something, instead of making a wallet that would make it easier to take out the money, could we create a toy or a tool that would address the issue of the anxiety instead? So in a way that they can train, we can extract information about that training, about that basically interaction, give that to the doctor and have the doctor know more about the patient on a historical basis. And we started out with an MVP, if some of you know what a minimum viable product is. It doesn't have to be that complex as it is today. This is 3 years ago by now. We found out the right size that we needed to come down to. We found the right number of cubes that we needed. But we had no idea about how to do it. We made a slightly more sophisticated functional prototype, so we could kind of start to mock up the way that they would snap together with the colors, and we could give instructions to the patients and see how they did and what they did with them. And it turned out to the semester project with like 10 by 10, like huge prototypes. And if any of you engineers or something here, these are like 555 timers, so everything, there's no code written for this, it's all hard kind of made into it. This is really, really horrible. You should never do it like that. But it's a way of kind of relaying, putting cubes together that recognize each other. We got more and more sophisticated with the prototypes, going down to 5 by 5 centimeters, doing everything ourselves. Found out the right number of cubes to use by just abusing people at the university and spying on them. That's what you can do in a university. And we thought, fuck, we are the most awesome guys at this university. We had a huge market analysis done. Parkinson's was a huge issue. We could use it in dementia, in Alzheimer, and stroke recoveries. So we thought, this is cool. We're going to be so fucking rock stars. We made this picture. And then we went to this place in Nice in 2014. And with the idea of being a medical toy kind of thing. And one of the mentors from the medical industry, right on day one, said, I love your idea, but you're going to die. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're never going to get the funding. You have to develop the hardware yourself. You have to get all these certifications, all these white papers. You're looking at 5 years, 10 years development before you're going to be in market. You're going to die. Nobody's going to fund it. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like the greatest idea ever. So that was the point where we learned this thing about in startups, drown your babies and shoot your puppies. Because we've been working on our baby for so long, going like, yes, we have a market for it, we can solve it if we can. He said, have you tried putting this in the hands of kids. I'm like, no, absolutely not. This is a medical toy. This is only for this. This is only for diagnosis. So try it. I have a 6-year-old kid back home, and she would love something like this. So we went out to the streets, we put it in the hands of a child, and you could just immediately see the child's imagination just exploding, right? She would ask, what is this? With these old, really bad prototypes. We just say, we don't know. And she would try to explore, and then in a matter of minutes, you're like, the mother asking, what are you building? This is a bridge, this is a tower, this is a heart, and this is for you, and smashing it all the time. So it had this intrinsic motivation in it, and we were like, maybe we should try to make it a toy. So we tried to explore it a little bit further. We looked at the markets, and there's something cool going on in the toy market at this point. A lot of the big guys are moving around in the toy market. But basically, since we're working a place where we are assessing the brain development, we are also a medical toy. We're also a toy for kids. We're also an educational toy. We're looking at a lot of different markets. And most investors go like, you lost me. I have no idea what you're talking about. There's focus on one market. Even if you talk to the real old ones, they'd say, give me all the numbers. Or he'd say, do it locally and then scale globally. And we're like, the market in Denmark is like 5 million people. It's not good. But eventually, we kept asking ourselves, what are we really? And we found out we're actually in all the markets at different stages. So we're a multi-segment, multi-channel kind of startup with a lot of different approaches to the different segments. But the one thing that is the same for every single one of these segments is the technology and the people. So if you're measuring an old lady with dementia, or you're measuring a 2-year-old kid that's starting to learn how to put together a memory and stuff like that, it's actually the same brain that you're measuring. It's just 2 different places in their life. So you can start looking at the data. You have to sell the one thing as a toy. You can sell the other one as a medical device. But it's the same thing. We focus on playDXTR first because the market is moving very, very rapidly. All the big guys are moving into this digital, real kind of play space. Lego being one of the really big ones. Disney Infinity, Activision Skylanders, a lot of startups are moving into this space. So we thought, okay, the right moment to go into a market is when it's growing and when it's moving, because that means that you can swoop in there and just pick your position. But everybody in those markets I mentioned before are human beings. And the data that we capture is going to give us this really, really unfair advantage above everybody else in the toy market. And this is Laurie, one of our beta testers, who's really excited about creating data. She's working with independent living for people with Down syndrome and autism in the US. And they have about 3,000 patients in New York area. And she's also a keynote speaker, which is really cool, on technology inside this organization for people with cognitive disabilities and their access to technology and then getting a better life out of it. So she's going to spearhead this to every convention that she's going to. It's going like, finally, we have a product that's actually able to capture that kind of data that we want to in a really nice, playful, and non-invasive way. So we're working with a bunch of cool partners on creating content. We're working with a bunch of cool technology partners to make all this happen. And we have some really amazing IP on all of this. Because that was one of the big questions at the EIA, the European Innovation Academy. Moving into a market that's in this kind of flux is how do we protect it? And one of the advisors there was a partner in this company called Novak Drews. And if you're from the US and you're in the law firm, IP business, these are the guys that are doing IP for Apple and for Amazon. We didn't know that at this point. We just had a few questions for them in France, and 2 minutes into our 5-minute presentation, he just went like, whoa, stop. So you're telling me that you want to do A, B, C, and D. Like, yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do. And at that point, we only had the shitty, handmade, wooden kind of prototypes. And he was like, this is pretty crazy. And one of the other partners in the survey says, I just counted 16 points that we can kind of patent. Okay, cool. So how do we do that? So now we filed for an international patent under the PCT, and it's going through right now. Cool stuff. This is the whole disruption thing. But anyway, Nokia burned and crashed on the mobile phone. The way of Waze kind of growing and taking over the whole market by piggyback riding on technology. got us thinking about the Lego bricks. Every time Lego sells a Lego brick, I'm done now. Every time Lego sells a Lego brick, that's it. It doesn't contribute any more value. Anytime we sell one of these, we sell 27 in a set, and that's 27 devices that's going to capture very high detailed information about interaction that has never been captured before. Thank you very much. Cool.
Thank you, Ken. Ideas are truly drivers of change. But no matter how brilliant an idea is,